Also we ran out of time, but I wanted to also tell Susan that the Obamas, also the Bidens, they got filthy rich off of their time in government. How did that happen? Netflix contracts, Spotify contracts, millions of dollars flowing in. They own mansions all over the planet now in some of the most luxurious places. All because he was president. Donald Trump lost a tremendous amount of money by being president. It's also wild. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, just like Susan, 888-630-WMAO. Always appreciate your contributions, whether you'd like to yell at me or not. Let's see here. We do have a poll out from the New York Times this weekend, which is dropping jaws inside of television green rooms everywhere. Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden in 5 out of 6 very important swing states. Voters in Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan have all expressed a preference for Trump in the 2024 election. Only the swing state of Wisconsin is where Biden holds a slight lead over Trump. The rest of those, though, Trump's got the advantage, and a big one in some cases. For more on this, let's go to Tom Bevan now. He's the co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, Tom. Good to talk to you as always, sir.
To be with you.
This seems like a big deal. It seems like a massive commentary on the Biden presidency.
Well, as you mentioned, I mean, this got a lot of attention, and I think rightly so. Because it is the New York Times and Sienna, which is a decent poll, but also coming from an organization that I don't think anybody's going to be accused of being right-leaning, and to show what it shows at this point in the race in these key swing states that Trump is leading not just by a little bit, but by a comfortable margin in all of these states that went for Biden in 2020, including a 10-point lead in Nevada and 6 in Georgia and 5 in Arizona, Michigan as well, Pennsylvania. I mean, this was pretty stunning, and I think it put into, stark relief the problems that Joe Biden faces if he's the Democratic nominee next year. And I think it has a lot of Democrats very, very worried.
Yes.
Including folks like David Axelrod, who took to Twitter to say, look, Biden needs to think very hard about whether he needs to stand down and step aside next year. And I think when you have voices like that saying those kinds of things publicly, they've been saying them privately for a few months now, but to have all that go public the way it has been, I think, pretty frightening for Democrats.
Yeah, they're very nervy about this moment. Is it, in the spirit of making predictions here, is it likely that Democrats figure out a way to get Joe Biden out of this race?
That is the parlor game that everyone's engaged in. Is Biden going to end up being the Democratic nominee? If he isn't, who replaces him, and how does that happen?
Right.
What's the mechanism by which they could get rid of him? Because I think, and look, the data on this is pretty clear. I mean, Democrats have said in polls they like Biden, but they want to give him a gold watch and usher him off the stage because they're concerned about his age and his mental acuity and all these other things. They'd rather have someone else running as their standard bearer. But then the question is, okay, well, could he hand it over to Kamala? Maybe, but she runs actually as bad or worse in a lot of these states Biden does. Her approval ratings are just as bad. And so I don't think she's the answer. And then the question to Gavin Newsom, he seems to be the next greatest hope. And
Yes.
There's no easy answer to that. And it's not like Kamala Harris is just going to step aside and say, yeah, you can budge in line in front of me.
Yes.
Mr. Progressive from California, white guy in front of the first African-American female vice president in the country's history. I don't think that's going to happen either.
No, I don't. And if it does happen, if Newsom tries to jump into this and Kamala feels entitled to the job, it's going to lead to a very bloody fight between the two of them, metaphorically. And it'll result, I think, in even more fracturing of their base, which that's the last thing Democrats need right now. In fact, in this New York Times poll, black voters are now supporting Donald Trump by 20. They have a 22% support for Trump in these swing states. As the New York Times points out, that is unheard of in presidential politics for a Republican in modern times. Additionally, Joe Biden has a single-digit advantage over Trump among Hispanic voters. That is a massive sea change among Hispanic voters in the United States. So we're looking at some pretty big demographic shifting, aren't we, Tom?
We are. I mean, that was one of the most shocking things. The New York Times pointed out the more diverse the state, the better Trump did. So in Nevada, for example, which has a huge Hispanic population, that was Trump's biggest lead. And in Wisconsin, which is the most white state of the bunch, that's the only state where Joe Biden had a slim lead, 2-point lead. But the more diverse the electorate, the better it was for Trump. And you mentioned the numbers; he's getting sort of historic numbers. And the thing that was really unified across all of these demographics was economics. I mean, all of these voters said they are in worse shape now. They're feeling more pain now under Biden's economy, and they have fond memories of Trump. They may not like him as a person, but they recognize that the economy is better when he was leading the country, and they're very frustrated with the way things are right now.
So when it comes to Trump, would you say diversity is his strength?
I don't know that I go that far. I mean, listen, it is, the view among Democrats, and, we ran a couple pieces on Real Clear Politics about this.
Yeah.
As, telling Democrats, basically saying, listen, don't panic over this. This is just a snapshot in time. And, oh, by the way, this is Biden's under the microscope right now, but when it gets to actually being a choice, and they're counting on the fact that Donald Trump is, if nothing else, he is a great unifier of the Democratic Party. He is a turnout machine,
right,
for Democrats, and they're hoping, when they may not like Biden, they may not like the economy, but if they're actually faced with that choice a year from now, that they would actually pull the lever for Democrats. That remains to be seen, because both of these candidates are known quantities, and right now Trump seems to be the upper hand.
So the voters in this New York Times survey were asked what their opinion of the economy is, and there's a number that stands out to me, a lot of numbers that stand out, but here's one from the crosstabs. Only 6% of Democrats rate the economy as excellent. Only 6% say that the economy is excellent under Biden. The economy seems like the screaming lead to this poll, Tom Bevan. In other words, like for Republican candidates across the country, and certainly the front runner, in this case Donald Trump if he gets the nomination, the economy is the thing that they clearly have to pound.
There's no question the economy is the number one issue. It's an order of magnitude. But I will remind your listeners, Vince, that was the case in November of 2022. A year ago, it was clear from the data, and voters were facing 8% on inflation, $5 a gallon gas, and by every single economic metric out there, the Democrats should have taken a beating at the polls, and they simply did not for a variety of reasons. Notwithstanding Joe Biden's low approval rating at the time, and his approval rating on the economy was even lower. So it's not a fait accompli that if the economy is bad, that means Biden is done. But it certainly is a drag on his candidacy. The other thing, like age, that the voters are very, very concerned about, and it makes him as vulnerable as we've ever seen any modern incumbent president in the United States.
And interestingly, they're nowhere near as concerned about Trump's age. Trump is, 76 years old? He's 77 now. Joe Biden is 80. He's 3 years older. But voters are much more concerned about Biden's age than they are about Trump's. That has to be the way that the two men present on television.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think most it's less about the number. It's just the way they wear their age, and people wear their age differently. And Trump wears 77 a lot more robustly than Joe Biden wears 80. He looks frail. He sort of wanders around. He has these moments. Trump looks like he's a very, sort of healthy, robust guy, even at his age. And I think voters absolutely recognize that.
Tom Bevan, what role do you think Barack Obama is going to play in the next year? Obviously, my presumption is that they're going to rely on him to campaign for whoever the nominee is. But his opinion about the nominee seems important. Back in 2020, he snapped his fingers and made all of these Democrats jump out of the race at the same moment to clear the path for Biden. Is there a scenario where Obama helps usher Biden out of office?
Oh, I mean, there is the. I mean, it depends on. I mean, there is a theory floating around that the only person who could do what we were just talking about, who could supplant Kamala Harris and unify the Democratic Party, on the sort of eve of the election or at the last minute in the 11th hour, would be Michelle Obama, who would come into Chicago, her hometown, where the DNC is going to be next August, and win by acclamation. So I guess if you subscribe to that theory, then yeah, I think Barack Obama would have a lot to do and to sort of pull the levers to make that happen. The problem is there's no indication that Michelle Obama has any interest in doing that right now. Now that may change over time, but
sure.
But right now, that seems like a sort of long shot, to say the least. And
should we read anything into Axelrod, being as close as he is to Barack Obama, coming out and saying publicly that Joe Biden should contemplate stepping down now? Is that an expression or an extension of Obama world, or is that just David Axelrod on his own?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, David Axelrod, was on Twitter. I'm sure he read the polls, but at the same time, Axelrod knows that he is still seen as being the concierge to Barack Obama, and it'd be as if Karl Rove said something about George W. Bush and regarding that, and people didn't think that they're so close still that there absolutely is a case that he may be speaking on behalf of Barack Obama and certainly the folks within his orbit that still, as you mentioned, have wielded a lot of influence within the Democratic circles, including in this White House.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, if Biden stays in this race, Tom, what does he run on? The economy. I'm seeing NBC had a big report this weekend that the White House is kind of thinking that this whole Bidenomics thing is a stinker, that it didn't really work, trying to describe, Bidenomics are so great, nobody's buying it. So what do they actually run on? To me, it strikes me that there's like two really possible issues. One is that they run very heavily on abortion because Democrats, although I'm disgusted by it, they think abortion's great, and the Democrats, it's wildly popular among their base for very few limits on abortion, and they run on that as an issue. And additionally, certainly demonizing Trump and anyone who would dare support him seems to be the old standby. What does this election look like if Biden stays in it?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned November 22 and the way the Democrats had a better than expected showing, and they did it in part by doing both of the things. Remember, Joe Biden gave that speech in Philadelphia with the sort of red lights behind him, talking about democracy being at risk, et cetera, and really trying to tie every Republican in the country to Donald Trump. And they also, leveraged abortion as best they could during that election. And so I think that's the playbook. Because again, look, there's still a year. The economy could improve. Inflation has been going down, although it still is the case, as you mentioned, that when the administration and the president, Karine Jean-Pierre, try and stand up and tell everybody how great the economy is, it just doesn't ring true because people still know they're paying, $5 a gallon for milk at the store. And I mean, it's just the prices are really still hitting people in their pocketbooks every single day. So
right.
It doesn't match with reality. It's not winning any voters. It's not gaining any traction. And so
yes.
If the economy doesn't improve, it's not going to be an area that they're going to be able to focus on and have any success with. So I suspect you're right. It'll be all culture. It'll be all, demonization and score dirt stuff. But again, it's going to come down to these, they can muster their resources as they did last time in the 8 states that matter, and that's where it's going to be won or lost.
Right. Yeah. Never run on an issue where it's super easy to fact check it. Like if you're going to lie, like, the economy is great. Then you just look at your bank account. You're like, no, it's not. It's not great here. Tom Bevan, thank you very much. I appreciate your time as always from Real Clear Politics. Always good to talk to you, sir. A lot of calls coming in. Let's take them. We've got Ted in Williamsburg, Virginia, line 4. Ted, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Vince. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I hear you great. Ted, go ahead.
All right. I just want to make a comment about the polls. I think you got to remember that we're still a year out.
Big time.
And anything can happen between now and then. And the polls now, I think, really are just more to influence, not to reflect. And also, I call these polls CNTF, cable news time fillers. I just think that they really have no relevance at all right now, other than to try to gin up your base. Whether they actually reflect to the public, I think is suspect. I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Well, my sense, given the misery of the economy and all of the great people we talk to on a frequent basis, is that these polls are the one we're talking about today is probably a pretty accurate reflection of a snapshot in time, right? That Biden is doing poorly and that people don't like their lives under his presidency. I think that's a legitimate thing to reflect on. But to your point about what influence are they trying to wield here? What is the second order effect of releasing this data? Well, the New York Times and all these other places, they support the Biden presidency up until this point. I think that there's an effort afoot to try and get Biden out. I think that's really animating a lot of this. They really want to put the hook on that guy and drag him off stage, and they don't know how to do it, but they're working towards a solution right now, Ted. So, yeah, I do think it's worthwhile to examine the intentions here, but things are not good.
Yeah, I know they're not good, and I really don't know how they're going to be able to get rid of them. I'm afraid to say, my wife says I'm a pessimist, but if Biden runs, I'm afraid that he'll win. And we've seen it happen before, and I'm afraid it's going to happen again.
Yeah, and if he wins, we know what that looks like, because it already sucks now. Imagine how much worse it could get. Ted, thank you. It's a good point. You and your wife sound like you balance out each other pretty well. Coming up, we'll take more of your calls. We'll take a closer look at the plot to take down Trump. And I do have some audio for you from outside of that courthouse in New York today. Chaos there. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:36 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Would be grateful for your contributions. Let's see here. We got Mike calling in from Gainesville. He's on line 3. Hello, Mike. You're back on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Hey, Vince. Happy to be here.
Good to have you. Go ahead, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, I was listening to Susan earlier, and I would have to say that when you say you haven't been affected by politics for the last 20 years, that means your life is rather insulated. She's probably the ex-wife of some politician, some lobbyist, or some defense contractor.
Well, Susan's not here. I don't want to cast aspersions too widely on her, but I did think when she said that, I was like, you kind of have to live in a TV studio to believe that the world hasn't changed much in 20 years. You've got to be pretty insulated. But yeah, no, that didn't strike me as the same experience as the average person. Let's put it.
Right. You lived through the mortgage crash of the 2007, 2008. That's 20 years.
Yeah, that's true.
And that didn't affect you in any way.
That's
You're
true.
pretty insulated.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Mike, has your life changed over the last 20 years?
Any number of ways, back and forth, sure.
Yeah. And it's like the thing, actually, at its core, though, the fundamental question is, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I would say for the lion's share of Americans, the answer to that is absolutely not. That's why we reflect on that data. 6% of Democrats say the economy's in good shape right now. Those are the only 6% who have either had their lives improved or they are so far gone mentally they think that the economy's great and they're going to keep supporting Biden for the next election.
People are willing to fool themselves.
I think so. Mike, thank you, as always. Let's see here. I've got Jake calling in from Manassas on line 2. Jake, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, great show, Vince. I listen to you every day.
Thanks, brother.
Hey, and great job handling Susan, by the way, just like the previous caller was talking about. That was great. Anyway, but I just wanted to say that when you go to the polls tomorrow, in addition to what the other gentleman was talking about going and voting tomorrow, make sure everybody votes. The party affiliation is not going to be listed next to the names of the candidates. So it's very important that you go to your local page, like for instance, here in Prince William County, to find out who the Republican candidates are. Mm-hmm. Write them down or put, I just printed it out on a document, but so that you have them with you and don't vote for the wrong person by accident just because you don't remember the names.
Right. You should look up your sample ballot. Now there are some positions on the ballot where there will be party affiliation listed. That is typically the Senate and the House of Delegates, the state Senate and the House of Delegates. Beyond that, though, if you're voting, like, say, for sheriff or somebody on the Board of Supervisors or the school board or Commonwealth's attorney, you will not see party affiliation. You're right about that. And as a result, you should definitely do the homework, pull up the sample ballot, go find out, in particular, maybe what your local Republican Party is recommending you vote for. And if you're in Fairfax County, you should also be reminded that there is a write-in campaign for Ed Nuttall, for Commonwealth's attorney to beat Steve Descano. So in other words, Ed Nuttall's name does not appear on the ballot. That is your job to write it in. Write in Ed Nuttall and and fill in the circle when you fill in that ballot.
And take the paper with you so you don't forget.
Amen. Yeah. It's always good. You're allowed to bring cheat sheets with you to the polls. That's a good piece of advice. Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate the listenership and the good advice today. Thank you. That's Jake in Manassas reminding people that, yes, it is Election Day tomorrow. So if you're in the Commonwealth, get thee to the polls and do your part. And as one of the candidates said last week, if he loses and you didn't vote in that election, you can't complain. So, if you want your right to complain, vote first, and then you can complain all you want. Let's check in on the presidential election for a moment. Today, Donald Trump took the stand in this stupid civil trial going on in New York. The civil trial involves Letitia James, the Democrat New York Attorney General, accusing Donald Trump of defrauding banks. None of the banks have made that allegation. In fact, the banks are perfectly happy with Donald Trump's business, but in the spirit of trying to rig the election and to destroy Joe Biden's political opponent using the justice system, Letitia James is going after him, and she found a judge who's perfectly willing to play along with all of this, a Democrat himself. Judge Engoron is a goofy little man. And here's New York Attorney General Letitia James this morning speaking to the press, which she loves doing, before Trump even took the stand.
This morning, Mr. Trump will take the stand in our trial against him, the Trump Organization, and other defendants. Mr. Trump has repeatedly and consistently misrepresented and inflated the value of his assets. And before he takes the stand, I am certain that he will engage in name-calling and taunts and race baiting.
Race baiting?
And call this a witch hunt.
She's just lying. She's just lying. What? Seriously, I mean, even if you want to say, like, name-calling and taunts, okay, fine. I mean, you can use whatever language you want. But race baiting? What are you talking about, Letitia James? Other than throwing everything against the wall in the hopes that something sticks.
I am certain that he will engage in name-calling and taunts and race baiting and call this a witch hunt.
I love that name-calling is one of the only weapons he has against all of this injustice, too. She's a loser, it's a witch hunt, that kind of stuff. That's Trump's ammunition here. What's your ammunition? Oh, the New York justice system, which you're subverting for your political goals?
But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters are the facts and the numbers. And numbers, my friends, don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. Inside the courtroom, it was chaotic today. New York Post reporting here. Former President Donald Trump testified Monday in the Blockbuster fraud case, in which the Trump Organization stands accused of $250 million in fraud that allegedly went on for decades, they claim. There are no victims here. Nobody's claiming to be a victim of this. The former president of the United States lost his cool on the witness stand Monday, yelling and attacking Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron, who will decide the outcome of the non-jury trial, and New York Attorney General Letitia James, as he testified in his own defense, saying they were, quote, trying to hurt him. Trying to hurt him. By the way, is this audio, cut 6 here, Corey, is this Trump inside the courtroom today? No, it's Trump at the court. Trump outside the court talking today. I didn't think we had audio from inside the court, just verifying that. Here he is at the court in New York today.
So while Israel is being attacked, while Ukraine is being attacked, while inflation is eating our country alive, I'm down here, and these are all political opponent attack ads by the Biden administration. Their poll numbers are terrible. You saw what happened today. The New York Times and CBS came out with a poll that I'm leading all over the place, but it's a very unfair situation. This is really election interference. That's all it is. This trial is ridiculous.
Trump called on the case to be dismissed immediately. Judge Engoron showing no appetite for that. But Trump saying, look here, the fraud was the court, was on behalf of the court. The court was the fraudster in this case. Everything we did was absolutely right. Earlier in the day, kind of a break in proceedings, one of Trump's attorneys, Alina Habba, Alina Habba steps out, and she had some remarks about the judge's conduct today.
Coming from the judge who has already predetermined that my client committed fraud before we even walked into this courtroom. I'm not here to hear what he has to say. Then why exactly am I being paid as an attorney, and why exactly are taxpayer dollars being used in this courtroom?
Reportedly, the judge was cutting off Trump, who was trying to make a defense for himself. And you know how a Trump speech goes. It'll start in one space. It'll end up somewhere completely different. But the man's entitled to speak, isn't he? Isn't he allowed to speak in a court where he's accused of some wrongdoing? He's innocent until proven guilty. The man's allowed to mount a defense. You may not like the style of that defense, but it's a defense. The judge was getting in the way today.
The answer is very clear. Because Miss James wants to stand right here like she did this morning and call my client a liar, call the company fraudulent, and make a name for herself.
For sure.
She said this morning that the numbers don't lie, and they won't lie in this case. Well, Miss James, I have a message for you. The numbers didn't lie when you ran for governor, and that's why you dropped out. And the numbers don't lie President...
That's very Trumpy, isn't it? It's rubbing off. The attorney's starting to sound like the guy.
And the numbers don't lie when President Trump runs for office in 2024. And those numbers are loud and clear. This country is falling apart.
It's true.
And if we don't stop corruption in courtrooms where attorneys are gagged, where attorneys are not allowed to say what they need to say to protect their clients' interests, it doesn't matter what your politics are. Everyone has a right in this country to get up and put a defense.
Yeah, of course. But you see, Ms. Habba, this is a show trial. There's not even a jury. It's just the judge just making a judgment and then subjecting you to the torture of having of him constantly tormenting you while you try and mount a defense.
You have a right to hire a lawyer who can stand up and say something when they see something wrong. But I was told to sit down today. I was yelled at, and I've had a judge who is unhinged slamming a table. Let me be very clear. I don't tolerate that in my life. I'm not going to tolerate it here. And you know what? You shouldn't either.
You shouldn't either. I don't tolerate that crap, says Alina Habba. A little bit more, Alina Habba beating up on old Letitia James, who surely deserves it.
Miss James came out this morning and said that she knew Mr. Trump, and she always calls him Mr. Trump because it kills her that he was the president. But the 45th president of this country, one of the best presidents we've had, has built a great company.
Oh, she's going to get fired. You meant to say the best president we've ever had. Come on now. You're on the payroll, lady. You got to say the best president we've ever had.
It's
certainly of our lifetimes, no?
Worth a ton more than that statement of financial condition, and she doesn't know how to get out of it because her politics won't allow her. She calls him a bully. She says he's going to bring out racial slurs. He's going to say things today and taunt her. Well, Miss James, you taunted him. Before you came into office, before you saw one record, one statement of financial condition, you taunted him. You said his administration was too male and too pale.
She really is an evil person. Oh, and that's such a good point. Yeah, she said that there were too many white people. Some of that anti-white racism that's so fashionable these days. Letitia James is a practitioner of that. The too male and too pale. she said. She also ran for office on destroying Donald Trump's life. Do you recall this? Her campaign was literally that she would hurt Donald Trump, elect me. So Democrats in New York said, ooh, let's pick her.
His administration was too male and too pale. Those are her words. She said
She's
that
a
she
racist,
and Michael Cohen
it turns out.
were going to be his biggest nightmare. Well, I have some news for you, Miss James. Michael Cohen folded, lied, and crumbled. Your star witness, along with all the DAs and corrupt AGs, need to be paying attention to what happens when you let us take the stand. When you let my client speak the truth, and the judge can tell me to sit down, and he can try and shorten my client's testimony, but it is loud and clear. They've got nothing.
Yeah, well, this is election meddling. That's what this is all about. That's why they're not interested in allowing Donald Trump to, fulfill any of his various rights found in the Bill of Rights for most people, but not for Trump. No, this is election meddling, and it's playing out before our very eyes. By the way, the media loves mocking her because she's a good-looking woman. Alina Habba, they say that the only reason she's around is because she's good-looking. That was a very capable, very impressive, speech today. I imagine she seems like she's good in the courtroom too. So, she probably deserves more credit than she's getting. But of course, they're not going to give it to her. It's 5:51 now. We told you earlier in the program about the release today of just 3 pages of the Tranifesto from the woman who attacked those children at that Christian school in Nashville. 3 pages leaked to, or at least seen now by way of Steven Crowder, the conservative podcaster who shared the pages today. A couple things are going on. The police there in Nashville say they're now conducting an investigation to figure out how this got out. Rather than just releasing the documents, now we have to punish the people who released them? That seems insane. Additionally, we're now getting reports, and Steven Crowder has been tweeting about some of this as well, that multiple big tech firms are censoring this immediately, lickety-split. In fact, you've got Facebook has shut down sharing the Tranifesto today. You're not allowed to share it on Facebook. It's being stopped, and it says this post may go against our community standards. They're opposed to allowing the truth to break its way through their platform. Also, Google is at the moment apparently censoring the story. If you search for Nashville Manifesto leak, you get a warning that, quote, it looks like the results below are changing quickly, and they urge you to check the source. Are they trusted on this topic? So censorship underway. One outlet not censoring, what used to be called Twitter, now X. Elon Musk's platform is still allowing this conversation to take place. And so are we here at WMAL. The great one, Mark Levin, up next on this fine station.